When I first arrived at Fairview Heights, I thought it was the kind of suburban paradise I'd only seen in movies. Neatly trimmed hedges, rows of matching mailboxes, and a friendly wave from every neighbor passing by. After bouncing between rentals for years, I was thrilled to finally call a place my own, especially a place that seemed so postcard perfect. I'm Alex, a digital marketing specialist who works from home. For the first time in ages, I felt ready to put down roots and invest in my surroundings. When I purchased this house, I had grand visions of weekend barbecues, movie nights under the stars, and one day soon, my dream backyard pool. It felt like a new chapter, one where I'd stop living out of boxes and start growing real connections in my community. But in Fairview Heights, there was one big catch. The Homeowners Association, rumored to be as meticulous as they come. My new neighbors all made polite references to HOA rules, as though they were an inescapable force of nature. At first, I shrugged it off. How strict could an HOA really be? I'd heard a few stories, but I figured if I paid my dues and kept my lawn in check, it'd be smooth sailing. Little did I know, I was about to learn just how serious these rules could be, and how some people, like the infamous OA Karen, were more than willing to enforce them with an iron fist. And ironically enough, there was an even bigger surprise waiting for me in the stack of HOA paperwork I hadn't quite finished reading, a discovery that would flip the script and set the stage for a showdown no one in Fairview Heights saw coming. My first week in Fairview Heights was wonderfully uneventful, at least until I heard a sharp rap on my front door early one Saturday morning. I opened it to find a woman in her late 50s, immaculately dressed in a pastel sweater set, holding a clipboard as though it were an ancient scepter. She offered a thin, polite smile that somehow conveyed both welcome and judgment all at once. "Hello, I'm Karen," she announced, her tone clipped. "I'm on the Fairview HOA board. I just wanted to introduce myself and, of course, go over a few housekeeping items regarding our neighborhood standards." I blinked. "Oh, sure. I'm Alex." "Nice to meet you," I replied, though I couldn't ignore the disapproving once-over she gave my casual t-shirt and gym shorts. Karen launched straight into a rehearsed spiel, yard maintenance schedules, approved color palettes for exterior paint, even guidelines about what kind of decorations could go up for the holidays. I felt a slight tightness in my chest as she spoke, rattling off rule after rule as if I were a child needing stern instruction. The entire interaction was polite on the surface, but there was an unmistakable tension. She flipped through her clipboard pages with meticulous care, pointing out possible areas of concern around my property, like a slightly wilted flower bed or a door wreath she thought was too large. By the time she finished, I was torn between amusement and a sense of looming dread. "And remember," she concluded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "if you ever have any questions about our guidelines, feel free to reach out. We only want what's best for the community. When we stick to these rules, we ensure Fairview Heights remains the gem that it is." Then, with a nod that felt more like a warning, she turned and left. I stood in the doorway, holding a half-finished mug of coffee and an uneasy feeling that I'd just been inducted into some unspoken game of compliance, and Karen was the self-appointed referee. Over the next few days, I caught glimpses of her patrolling the neighborhood, clipboard never far from reach. A few neighbors discreetly warned me, "She's nice enough until you cross her," they'd say. Karen's the reason every hedge on this street is exactly the same height. It didn't take a detective to sense the fear behind their courteous words. I try not to let it bother me. After all, what trouble could I really get into just by living my life? Little did I know, Karen was about to fixate on my biggest home improvement dream, ready to turn it into a homeowner's nightmare, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I'd wanted a backyard pool for as long as I could remember. Something about being able to take a dip on a hot day without leaving home felt like the pinnacle of comfort and fun. Once I settled into my new place, I thought, now's my chance to finally make that dream a reality. After doing a ton of research online, checking Fairview Heights regulations, county permits, and even glancing at the HOA guidelines, I started drafting a simple plan. Nothing too extravagant, just a modest in-ground pool, big enough for a few friends to hang out around or for me to swim short laps in the evenings. Feeling proud, I scheduled a consultation with a reputable pool installation company. They confirmed everything looked kosher from a legal standpoint. "No problem," they said, as long as I got final clearance from the HOA. At that point, I didn't see any reason for trouble, so I breezed ahead, filling out the standard forms in the HOA's labyrinthine online system. But the moment word got out that I was planning to build a pool, Karen appeared on my doorstep, yet again. This time, I barely opened the door when she thrust an HOA compliance pamphlet in my face. A pool, she asked, her voice tight. You do realize that requires thorough review. We have very strict rules about altering the landscape in Fairview Heights. I've already looked into the guidelines, I replied, trying to stay polite. Everything's within the recommended specs. Karen's expression remained icy. We'll need to ensure your fencing meets our safety standards, confirm your pool color scheme matches the neighborhood aesthetic, and verify that your pumps don't exceed our noise limits. She rattled off requirement after requirement, each more niche than the last. I assured her I'd address all these concerns, but she didn't seem convinced. Make sure you submit a formal request to the board. We can't have any unsightly structures ruining our community's charm, she said, turning to leave. Under her breath, she added, a pool might be a real eyesore if it's not done right. As she walked away, clipboard clutched tightly, I couldn't help wondering just how many hoops she'd make me jump through. Still, I was determined. This was my home, and I wasn't about to let a hypervigilant HO rep kill my excitement. For once, I was going to get what I wanted from a house I owned. Unbeknownst to either of us, though, I had a secret ace up my sleeve that was about to make this whole situation a lot more interesting. 3 weeks passed, and my pool project was finally taking shape. I got an approval from the county, paid all the necessary fees, and even preemptively talked to a few neighbors who were surprisingly supportive. It'll be great for the 4th of July barbecue, some said. My optimism soared. Then, one Saturday morning, I stepped onto my porch to find a bold red envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a notice from the HOA, complete with official seals, informing me I was being fined an initial penalty for unauthorized construction. The sum was eye-popping. Wait, what? I blurted, scanning the letter. It stated that my pool installation had violated Section 4.2.1 of the Neighborhood Beautification Code, plus a few other obscure citations referencing noise disturbance and aesthetic dissonance. I had no idea what half of it even meant. My heart pounded. This can't be right. I filed all the papers. Then realization hit Karen. There was no doubt in my mind she was behind this. Right on cue, Karen strolled by on the sidewalk, her ever-present clipboard in hand. Spotting me, she paused, a smug half-smile curving her lips. Oh, did you get our notice? She asked, feigning concern. I'm afraid the board had no choice. Your project is out of compliance. I held up the letter, my annoyance plain. Out of compliance, how? I filled out every form, got my permits. The board said it was fine. Karen clicked her tongue. We've received several complaints about the construction noise, and the style of your pool hasn't been formally approved. It's an eyesore, really. The board voted to impose a fine until you correct these issues. Anger flared in my chest. No one ever told me about any formal style approval. Isn't that determined when you submit your application? Which I did. Weeks ago. She shrugged, her expression annoyingly casual. We discovered new details. Besides, regulations do allow for retroactive adjustments. It's all in the bylaws. I opened my mouth to argue further, but she was already turning away, tossing a perfunctory, "Have a good day," over her shoulder. I stood there stunned, the fine notice crinkling in my fist. I stormed inside, adrenaline surging. This is ridiculous. She can't just change the rules on a whim. I grabbed my HOA documents, ready to find some legal loophole or at least some evidence of Karen's overreach. Little did I know, in the midst of my frantic search, I was about to stumble on a fact that would turn the entire HOA structure upside down. I was about to become, or already was, the new HOA president, armed with more authority than Karen ever dreamed of wielding. Frustrated beyond belief, I spent the rest of that day poring over the HOA bylaws, meeting minutes, and every scrap of paper I could find. There had to be something in these dense documents that would prove Karen was acting beyond her authority. My coffee grew cold as I scrolled through PDFs on my laptop, toggling between legal definitions and the HOA's own charter. After hours of searching, I stumbled on something that made me do a double take, a clause about leadership succession within the HOA. Apparently, if the sitting HOA president stepped down or was removed by a majority vote, the board is obliged to elevate the current vice president to the top role. No special election needed. But that wasn't the strange part. The weird thing was, the vice president role was listed under my name. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd misread. I double-checked the date of the document, just a month before I moved in. Then I recalled a conversation with a neighbor who mentioned that the previous vice president, someone who was a friend of my late aunt, had resigned right before I arrived. Because of some technicality in my aunt's estate, I had inherited not only the house but also her position on the HOA board. And with the old president quietly stepping down, that effectively put me in line to become the new HOA president. My heart pounded as I processed the revelation. Could this be real? Did I literally have the authority Karen was wielding against me? The more I read, the more it became clear. Yes, I did. A wave of nervous excitement washed over me. All this time, I've been scrambling to follow her draconian rules, but the HOA's own bylaws indicated I was the one who could define them now. Of course, I still needed to confirm the details with the board. It wasn't like I could march up to Karen and shout, "I'm your new boss." I had to be sure. But each new paragraph and signature I uncovered painted a picture that was increasingly in my favor. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of guilt. Leading the HOA was never something I aspired to. But seeing how Karen exploited her power made me realize that perhaps this was exactly the oversight the community needed. Someone who wouldn't slap people with random fines or make them jump through hoops for a backyard pool. Someone who'd actually listen and try to make living here pleasant. Still clutching the printouts, I leaned back in my chair. The fine Karen had issued rested on the table, a reminder of how far she'd already pushed me. "Well, Karen, I thought you want to talk about proper authority? We're about to have a very enlightening conversation." The very next afternoon, I spotted Karen marching down the sidewalk, clipboard tucked under her arm as always. I'd been waiting for the right moment, heart thumping at the thought of telling her what I'd uncovered. There was no sense in delaying it anymore. I waved her over from my porch. "Karen, got a minute?" She hesitated, narrowing her eyes as if expecting me to complain about the fine again. "I'm quite busy, but sure." I took a breath. "Stay calm. Listen, I've been doing some digging into the HOA bylaws. Found a few interesting things." Karen's face flickered with something. Doubt, impatience, maybe both. "If this is about your backyard pool, we've made it clear you're in violation." She tapped her clipboard pointedly. "I have the paperwork right here." "Actually, it's about leadership," I said, my voice steady. "Turns out, when the old HOA president stepped down recently, the board rules state the vice president automatically steps in. And, well, I lifted a printout that clearly listed my name. That's me." For a long moment, Karen stood there, blinking. She looked at the printout, back at me, then again at the paper. "That can't be right," she finally said, her voice wobbling with disbelief. I held my ground. "It's all in the bylaws, pages 14 through 16, specifically." My aunt was on the board, and when she passed, I inherited not just her house but her role. The previous president resigned a month ago, leaving me next in line. No special election needed. Karen's grip on her clipboard tightened. That's impossible," she murmured. "No one told me." Apparently no one realized. I cut in gently, fighting the urge to smirk. "But it's official." I even spoke to the rest of the board, and they confirmed it. Karen swallowed hard, her face blanching. "So, what does this mean?" "It means," I said, clearing my throat, "the fine you issued on me might need to be revisited. And the pool project. Fully compliant. Also, we'll be reviewing how notices are handled around here, so folks aren't ambushed with random fees." She gaped, speechless. I almost felt a twinge of sympathy, but then I recalled the ridiculous stress, the threat of huge fines, the intimidation she'd used against me and countless other neighbors. Karen stammered, "But I've been working to keep this community up to standard for years. This is all I know." I sighed, letting some warmth seep into my voice. "I get that you want the best for Fairview Heights, Karen. But there's a better way. One that doesn't involve micromanaging every lawn and slapping people with bogus violations." Her lip quivered, and for the briefest moment, I saw something akin to vulnerability in her eyes. But just as quickly, her face tightened again. "Well, if you think you can do a better job." "I plan to," I interrupted, forcing a polite smile. "And I'm offering you a chance to work with me rather than against me. Because I'm not here to bully people. I'm here to make sure we strike a balance between community standards and personal freedom. Isn't that what you always said you wanted?" She didn't answer, just clenched her teeth and gave a curt nod. "Fine," she whispered, her composure cracking. Without waiting for further discussion, she spun on her heel and strode away, shoulders rigid with indignation. I watched her retreat, exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Despite the tense exchange, a weight lifted off my shoulders. No matter how Karen felt, The neighborhood was about to see a shift in who called the shots, and if I had anything to say about it, Fairview Heights was going to become a place where a little personal creativity wasn't treated like a crime. Over the next few weeks, word spread like wildfire through Fairview Heights that there was a new HOA president in town, one who just happened to be the very person Karen had tried to penalize. Reactions ranged from quiet relief to outright celebration. Neighbors who'd felt oppressed by Karen's heavy-handed approach swapped stories of her past antics like war tales finally seeing a happy ending. As my first official act, I called a board meeting. I won't lie, I was nervous. Chairing a room full of people who'd been used to Karen's methods was intimidating. But I laid out a vision for a more balanced HOA, focusing on fair enforcement of rules without stifling individual expression. The board, perhaps tired of Karen's relentless citations, welcomed the change. A vote was taken to rescind all pending fines related to the pool, as well as other questionable penalties she'd levied on homeowners. Karen herself attended, perched stiffly in the second row. She remained silent for most of the meeting, arms folded tightly. Yet, when we reached the final agenda item, introducing a community feedback system so neighbors could share concerns and ideas without fear, she cleared her throat and offered a brief that could be helpful. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was a step toward civility. Meanwhile, my backyard pool became a symbol of a new era. Where once neighbors might have hesitated to stop by, afraid Karen would magically appear with her clipboard, they now dropped in with a friendly wave, curious to see how the project was coming along. Some brought snacks, others offered home improvement tips. A few folks even teased that my pool might become the unofficial community hangout now that the HOA climate had warmed up. As for Karen, rumors swirled that she was thinking of stepping down from the board altogether or possibly moving out. She never confirmed it publicly. Every so often, I'd see her walking past my house, hands empty of her usual notes and forms. She looked deflated, maybe a little lost. It stirred a strange sense of empathy in me. After all, she'd built her identity around controlling this community, and now that control had slipped through her fingers. One evening, I found her standing on the sidewalk by my newly installed fence, one I'd chosen for both style and compliance. She didn't seem to be examining it for infractions, just looking. "Karen," I called softly, stepping outside. "You okay?" She blinked, startled, then offered a half-smile. "Yeah, just thinking. It's different around here now." I nodded, unsure what else to say. "Change can be good," I managed. "But if you ever have ideas about how to keep Fairview Heights nice without driving everyone crazy, I'm here to listen." She didn't reply, just gave another small nod before walking off. Yet the next day, I noticed she'd left a note in the new community suggestion box I'd set up. It read simply, "Garden Beautification Project." Something told me we might find a way to work together after all, in a healthier, more collaborative way. In the end, I kept my pool, my house, and my sanity, and gained a role I never saw coming. Fairview Heights seemed happier, more vibrant, and a little less fearful of stepping on HOA toes. Sometimes unexpected twists have a funny way of leading us to exactly where we need to be.